Joining me today is Mike Hruska, founder and CEO of Problem Solutions. He's a technologist and design thinking practitioner with experience spanning across standards, emerging technologies, learning, and science. As a former researcher at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, he provides technology, business model, and innovation solutions to Fortune 500 companies, government, startup companies. We are so excited to have him here today to share his expertise. So without further ado, Mike, I will let you take over.
Sounds great, Stephanie. Thank you for that. And welcome, everyone. Just to reinforce something that Stephanie said, would be awesome if you guys are active in the chat. If you have questions, Stephanie will moderate those into the discussion. I want to make sure that you get absolutely as much as you possibly can out of this today. This is a big topic. It's something that's really exciting as a technologist and studying technology my whole life. And as a researcher, I think we're living at the best time for technology. It's kind of glorious opportunity. If you think about something like electricity, we discovered electricity. It took years for us to build the infrastructure to distribute electricity. Today we have cell phones. It took a while to get cellular networks, and it took a while to get all the materials and make the cell phones and get them out all over the world. And there's always something that's slowing the adoption. If you look at something like AI, we already have all of the infrastructures in place. We all have phones, we all have laptops, we all have some way to interface in the internet. The question then becomes, what is this thing, and how do we use this thing, and how do we make it meaningful in the context of our business, and how do we make people more productive, and maybe we could even create more workplace happiness. So that's some of the stuff that I want to talk to you about today in this look at enabling the augmented enterprise. If you think about AI as sort of a concept, our chief scientist, Dr. Dennis Folds, spent a few months arguing with me that there's no such thing as AI. It's just really good software. And while I do agree there is such thing as AI, because that's the design tenet for the technology that we're making, if we think about it as just really good software, it gives us the ability to kind of push away the complexity and the fear of it and say, all right, it's good software. How do we pair it up with people? How do we make that functional? So this idea of an augmented enterprise is an organization that leverages artificial intelligence to empower individuals and teams. Essentially, we're augmenting, the intelligence of the organizations. Imagine if people could do their work more creatively, with less time, whether that's making, designing a learning experience, or designing curriculum, or helping the business even learn faster, because you have a range of different agents that help the business think. And I'm going to show you guys some things later on, just some quick sort of demos of some pieces. But imagine if teams were empowered to make better decisions faster. And imagine if things that were very routine were automated. So these are the kinds of things that an augmented enterprise sorts of covered. I'm really interested because all of us have different experiences and all of us have played with different things. I threw a link up here for you. bit.ly/AI Toolbox. This links to AI Daddy's 600 plus AI tools. And there are tools for basically everything you can possibly think of. But would you mind taking a second and throw any AI tools that anyone's been playing with into the chat? Right. Well, I suggest that you check this out, because you're going to find things that do audio, video, images, and all kinds of creative types of things. And you might just find the one thing that makes your job slightly easier tomorrow or today. So Greg Brockman, one of the co-founders of OpenAI, said this: it's an amplification of what humans can do. It's kind of like hiring 6 assistants. The way that I think about it is, it's like a really eager 20-year-old intern that, if you're really specific with what you want it to do, can really do well for you. I'll give you an example. I was facilitating a workshop on AI readiness recently, and teams broke out into 4 different groups, and one of the groups started to use ChatGPT. And I said, how are you using it? And they said, we asked it for ideas about AI in manufacturing. And I said, stop. Pretend it's a 20-year-old intern named Sam that just walked in. Tell Sam your name, your experience. Tell about Sam about your team. Tell Sam that your mission is to develop ideas for using AI in manufacturing, and ask Sam to ask you questions. and they all did it, and it was amazing, and there was a major outcome. So essentially, ChatGPT was facilitating their subgroups by asking them questions. Really good intern. So for you, something that I think might be helpful for you is to think about these three questions as we go through some of the models and some of the ideas here. Why might you use AI? And if you did use it, what are some hopeful outcomes? If you have a Sharpie or a crayon or a pen, or even if you want to type, I think these are good things that for you to walk away from, thinking about why, thinking about the hopeful outcomes. And then the big thing for me, because I'm a measurement nerd, is how might you know it, the hopeful outcome happened? What metrics might be associated, with the business? And it could be associated with learning itself, but it really could be associated with the business at the end of the day. So that's your personal mission, should you choose to accept it. AI has been around since the 1950s, and I'm not going to bore you with all of the stuff, but the point here is that in decades, only weeks of progress happens. And now in weeks, decades of progress is happening. We have an onslaught of major models out there for large language, for image, for medical purposes, and avatars and video. And the way that we think about media today is going to transform at an accelerated rate. So there's a ton more coming, and I think getting out in front of this and staying on top of it's super important. And I'll show you a little later, but we said at the beginning of the year, we want to become an augmented enterprise, and we want to become one at a really good capability level as fast as possible, and really focused our time. And I'm going to share some of the best practices that we use to do that. So maybe to help you a little bit with your personal journey here during this, why AI? So certainly we know that creating personalization and adaptive learning is awesome and it's effective, but it's expensive. Maybe it isn't anymore. Maybe there are a ton of things you could do with customer experience. There are a lot of things you can do with boosting productivity and democratizing knowledge. There's a lot, as we talk about this idea of an adaptive learning organization, there's a lot of extra value that you can bring to the business. And at the end of the day, it's really about staying competitive. And then obviously considering sustainability and scalability. So this idea of an augmented enterprise is built of essentially four functional areas. One is learning ecosystems thinking. And we'll double click on that. The second is becoming an adaptive learning organization. That doesn't mean use adaptive learning tools. That means being able to adapt as an organization that's highly coupled with the business itself, and you're able to sense and augment and respond to change faster and faster. Collective intelligence is essentially the knowledge flows and learning loops in an organization. By that, I mean, in an organization, there are places where new knowledge is created, and additional people need to know about that knowledge. And that's where learning comes into the organization. And then the fourth functional element of that is this idea of an augmented intelligence team. Don't think humans in the loop, think computers in the group, like the workshop example I gave you earlier. It said 6 people that were sitting in a circle, and then suddenly they were all looking at the same terminal, and it was facilitating their thinking. I don't know if anyone's read Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. Kahneman, he essentially says that there are 2 systems. There's system 1 in our brain and system 2. System 1 is quick improv, and system 2 is evaluative and analytical and takes a while. So if you said, Mike, write a 508-word blog about the benefits of dry aging meat, I could definitely do that for you. It would just definitely take me 45 minutes, maybe 2 hours or so. But ChatGPT is really good at that, and it'll give me something better than I would write probably. But what I'm talking about is, how can we use it to prompt our system 1 thinking? How do we use it to help us think better and not just come up with the answers, but help us find the answers inside of us? And so think about an augmented enterprise as a virtual org chart. Claire from our team is here. Claire has a range of agents that help support her in a range of marketing tasks that reduces her effort and extends her reach. I have a range of agents that I use that I'm going to show you in a bit as well. But think about these, what we call the agents, as a virtual org chart that supports an individual or team or a person and supports the communication between them. So this idea of a learning ecosystem, I don't think this is foreign to anyone, but we're essentially aligning people and experiences and content and process and analytics and technology with the business strategy. And Claire if you get a chance to throw something related to learning ecosystem modeling, and we have a learning ecosystem canvas that we can share with you at some point too, maybe in a follow-up email after this. And these are some tools that help you think about your learning ecosystem, what the value proposition of it is, and helps to identify alignment between these types of things. So having a good, solid understanding of learning ecosystem is key. This concept of an adaptive learning organization essentially has 10 principles. Number one thing is putting people first. And I know there's a lot of fear that AI will take jobs, and it can, and it probably will, but it will also empower a lot of other things and a lot of new types of roles and new types of thinking. So key in an organization is really putting people first. Data informed strategy. One thing I think that's really critical is getting a valued perception of L&D. Every organization is different, but any organization that would highly value L&D and empower L&D to do everything they could possibly do for people development is going to be a vibrant organization. That place is going to be full of connective collaboration and rich with ideas and feedback. And so these are just some of the principles. Also have a sort of a checklist and a self-evaluation, and unpacks these principles a little bit further that we'll share with you in the follow-up. So to double click on this idea of collective intelligence, when I was in my NIST days, I was studying large scale geophysical systems and other things, and looking at some interesting statistical techniques. And I was collaborating with a few people that were early SCORM authors. And I said, wait a second, this stuff maps. There's a flow to what an organization is, much like you'd have a flow inside of a water system or in a drainage system, in a basin. And so this idea of collective intelligence is really thinking about critically, where is new knowledge created and how does that knowledge flow in an organization? Where are there opportunities where that knowledge needs to be disseminated and people's behaviors need to be scaffolded in some way, and people need to develop competency and performance along the way. So it's just the idea that there's something more that we can unlock inside of our organizations. So essentially, the 5 steps towards the future, if you want to move to use AI in your organization and you want to move to use AI in sort of thoughtful ways, is number one, got to increase the technology understanding. Things are moving fast. YouTube University might be the best place to actually learn right now, but things are moving extremely fast in the technology landscape, and there's new players, and so got to understand the technology. And then the second is really aligning the learning strategy with the business strategy. So what are the KPIs that need to be focused on? Is it making learning faster? Is it making learning better? Is it making learning have significant impact, and getting that understanding? The other element, and like I said, every organization is different, but you always have early adopters and you always have laggards. In some cases, you might have Luddites in some ways. And so it's about motivating and shifting mindsets and opening up the idea of possibility, and then piloting and playing and growing along the way. But ultimately, you've got to bring these things into production. You got to be able to scale them and sustain them. So these are the 5 sorts of steps that on our journey we took towards becoming an augmented enterprise. And now there's another way that you can think about this too, because if you think about this idea of a virtual org chart, you could pair AI up with an individual. I'm going to show you in a little bit an LXD agent that does a whole bunch of tasks that a learning experience designer would probably love to have in their hands, because it would make their job easier, and they could produce the real secret sauce and creativity on top of it. You could pair AI up with teams, like the workshop example that I gave you earlier. I have an agent that I work with that knows everything that Problem Solutions has ever done. And I can talk to that agent about anything I'm thinking about, from making decisions to strategy to product development, all kinds of ideas. So that's an example of pairing it up with the leader. And then you have ones that you could pair up with the organization that can persist and carry conversations on and in between. And so we have a bot named Doug that does this stuff for us and helps take things from meetings and disseminate knowledge flows to the right people in the organization. You also might think about this, and this is down the road, and unless you're in the supply chain, and this is on the road right now, about AI working across ecosystem with your vendors. And that could be vendors for hard goods, or that could be vendors for talent as well. So the thing that's critical, where we've found the most sort of output, it's great to pair it up with an individual, but when you pair it with the team, do some pretty amazing things. I was working on a podcast design with someone, and I had a few of us on, and they had never really used ChatGPT before. And with some of the prompt engineering tradecraft that we use, we were able to design the entire podcast, all the guests, all the questions, all the invite emails, LinkedIn announcements, all of the copy, and all of it in 42 minutes with the two of us, just having that thought partner there. Like I said, from humans in the loop to computers in the group. And so this idea of an augmented intelligence team is something pretty powerful. And this is not, we don't start with the job in this case, really start with the work. What work happens, in a team that might be a little synchronous and then asynchronous, and then you got to get feedback and work. How could you compress those types of working cycles by having that agent working with you and a team, in some ways? Could you use something like an LXD agent with the SME and work back and forth synchronously and maybe get to something faster that takes less time for development and less SME time away from the business? Ultimately, just think humans plus automation. The pattern that I like is atomize and automate, break work down to the smallest tasks that there are, and see, can you automate that? Can you augment an individual, or can you augment a team to do that type of work? So a thought exercise for you for a moment. I'll give you 20 seconds of silence. If you're thinking about your team, you're thinking about your organization as some of the ideas that I'm sharing with you, what things might an augmented intelligence team be able to help? Now, you can write them down, that's fine. But if anyone has any that they want to share, I'd love to hear something. And also, Stephanie, this is a fine place if you have any questions that are burning in the chat.
No questions yet. We did, people shared some of the different tools that they've used, ChatGPT, Grammarly, Midjourney, which was a new one for me. I'd never heard of that one. Also Kahoot, AI question generator. So yeah, I think for me, having, you mentioned you have that agent that knows everything, the history of everything Problem Solutions has ever done. And I think that's so great, because over in marketing, we're constantly getting questions like, oh, did we do a webinar like 3 years ago? I think so-and-so presented on it. Do you still have the recording? And if I had a little robot that could dig up that webinar for me and just send it over and I didn't have to look for it, it'd be amazing.
Someday you will.
I know we're working on it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's so many things. So something to think about. Start with the pains, right? So that start with the pains, consider the gains. So like for you, it's like, oh, I have to go and I have to dig this up, and then I have to find this person, I have to do that, then I have to do this. So, all right. I also threw another link in the chat for you. There is an aiforthat.com, and this is a great site. And you'll find all kinds of tools there, but they also map all the different types of jobs, and then they map the AI tools related to the job. So you can find your job on there, and you can find what AI tools are mapped to it by AI. It's getting seriously recursive. So, all right, back to our regularly scheduled program here. So in thinking about this, right? So if you're going to get AI literacy, then you're going to need more people to have more skills. Conveniently, you're all in L&D, so you know how to help people get skills. But what are the ways that you can close the skill gaps? First, upskilling and reskilling programs. Folks at ELB offer AI boot camps. And I highly recommend, if you want to just take a group of people and spend 3 hours and get them using ChatGPT and other tools on, like, they've done steroids for 10 years, then that's the kind of thing that you want to do. So first, getting that. The second link is, really most of the folks that I end up working with, there's got to be a consistent chain, because things change every day. Literally, and every week there's 10 new things that are happening. And so the collaboration and the knowledge sharing component of this is really, really critically important. Don't discount, we're all in different geographic places, but don't discount the value of educational partnerships. We partner closely with a Pitt branch campus here in Johnstown with the computer science program, the digital humanities program, and the marketing program. We're spreading knowledge into those programs and helping students gain, and those students are helping us gain. So there's a lot of like synergistic capabilities that you can build there. The other side of it is maybe you just need to acquire the talent or the knowledge if you want to speed up what it is that you're doing. I'll see this. I know we're all pretty much in L&D here, but a lot of organizations, L&D is not sitting at the table on the AI conversations, but it can do so much for an L&D organization. So the question becomes, how do you get there? On the job training, opportunities to practice, opportunities to play, hack days, all of these things are from the playbook that we have used, and then continuous learning, just endless. Doesn't hurt to have a great Slack channel that's everything AI and everyone doing knowledge sharing through there. We've got a bunch of tools already that we can leverage to keep things rolling along. So if you want to think about sort of what you can do now, number one, what are the skills? It's a bit challenging, but I'll bet you $1 that you can use ChatGPT to help you write a lot of the skill requirements and thinking about skills framework and experiences. Depending upon how many people you ultimately need on your Tiger team, you could conduct skill assessments and look at continued upskilling, but really getting the training for people to be able to play. From some of the workshops, the boot camps that I've seen, people say, I thought I knew how to use ChatGPT. I didn't know you could do this type of stuff with it. I had no clue. And so providing people some on-the-job learning opportunities and letting them play. Hack days are always great, and friendly competitions, always a wonderful thing too. But then also just monitoring person performance and thinking about developing a focused team, Tiger team, A team, if you will, or maybe AI team, and build the skills. So there's 5 keys essentially to augmented intelligence teams. And if you're building your first augmented intelligence team, you've got to have some AI literacy. You got to be able to understand some of the concepts, thinking about changes, thinking about any regulations, and troubleshooting, as well. And the next bucket is really technical skills. Middleware, we say middleware engineering or prompt engineering. It is in plain English language, but for people that have really good coding skills or scripting skills or just good logic or rhetoric skills, they can be an insanely useful asset on your team. So getting people up to speed on a couple of the things. Someone mentioned Midjourney earlier. That is a great tool for generating AI art. And ChatGPT will actually, if you tell it to do something for you and give you the prompt for AI art, then you could take that and you could paste that into Midjourney, and Midjourney will make you the art. Huge time savings. And so building those technical skills. The thing that you really want on your augmented intelligence team is critical thinking. People are able to creatively problem solve and work through fuzziness, because as you start to build things that are useful for you, or that you want to be useful for you, they may be okay, but it's the ability to refine those and refine the prompting that you're doing. And then obviously collaboration and adaptability really go hand in hand. The teams that you're empowering, hopefully you're on them. They've got to feel like this is the most important thing in the world. They've got to be excited. They've got to feel supported. They really need they really need a cheering behind them. So in terms of like a maturity model, so 5 steps in the maturity model: reactive. And I think many, if not most of organizations are reactive right now. We're going to try this. We're going to try that. We're not sure what we're going to get. There are a number of organizations that I've seen that have established the strategy and have defined governance and have pilots and initiatives. And then you get up to operational, optimize, and innovative. I don't think if someone's innovative, I'd love to do a case study with them and do some research on the effectiveness and performance outcomes. Optimized, I think organizations will reach optimized starting in a year to 3 years. We classify ourselves as operational, formal strategy. Things are in production environments, and we're continuing to scale initiatives and spread additional agents throughout the use. But this gives you an idea of the probably inevitable journey. I'm sure at one point in time, someone was sitting there saying, no, this fax machine's good enough. That internet thing, that's just pure hype. I'm good. I'm sticking with the fax machine. So this is the journey that's out in front of you. I'm sure that everyone knows what SCORM is here. And if you don't know the name Philip Dodds, Philip was instrumental in working with industry and the Pentagon program ADL at bringing to life what we know, what became the SCORM and what ultimately has become the Experience API. But Philip, we lost Philip back in 2007, but he left us many great things. And one was my favorite quote, working code trumps all theory. And try to live by that. So I'm going to show you just a couple of things here. And then I'll give you guys some models here to think about going forward. So this is essentially my intranet desktop. Except all of these things here, virtual corporation, Pete, that's an agent that when I launch that's the thing that knows everything about the business. Our entire product development strategy is encoded into middleware agents. And when I need to develop anything related to a product, whether it's science fiction future prototyping or product concept or product brief or product roadmap, decision support to be able to do that. You know, we found that in some cases, this gets us 5 to 10 to 15% better results. And in some cases, it saves us 80% of the time using different types of agents. You know, in a leadership position, I have a decision support agent that is independent, that doesn't know anything, that helps to be that outside like you would have an advisor. We have a consultant about any topic that I need to get consulted on. I'm going to show you guys a sales enablement agent and a learning experience designer in a second, but proposals, research and development. If I need to get smart about a place, a domain that I don't know, like I think of something random, sugar refining. I don't know anything about sugar refining, but I have an adaptive learning system that will teach me Socratically about anything that I want to learn. So I learn not just the content, but the critical thinking skills as well. And actually launching here very shortly a website concierge that extends our virtual corporation Petebot agent out into a customer-facing chat, essentially, that allows people to interface with an extremely knowledgeable. Probably it knows everything that everybody knows in an organization. So it knows more than any single person, you know, ultimately. And so just to give you an example. So this is an LXD agent, much like ChatGPT. You've got conversations on the left. On the right, though, you know, essentially, these are buttons that launch very highly specifically tuned agents that are built with prompts and middleware that know all of the things about designing learning, you know, from Gagne to Bloom, and all of the relevant stuff. And they're helpful at designing things. So we need to design them. And so here I talked to this LXD agent a few times around developing the outline for a psychological safety training program. Ultimately, it gave me something that was good, but I just kept asking for more, and it gave me more and more and more until we had way more than we actually needed to take into, you know, what the design was. So this helps with curriculum design and learning objectives, scenario basis. It knows standards like SCORM and XAPI, even helps with UI UX concepts along the way. And so that's relevant to learning. On the flip side, we have a tool called Sales Sage, and this knows all about selling. It knows Sandler, it knows Challenger, it knows every single sales model that's out there, and it can help you role play, and it can also help you reverse role play. So I can say, I'm Problem Solutions, and Claire, and you, the agent, are X firm. Sell me on our services. And so you can do adaptive guidance as well. It helps with meeting preparation. We launched this a few months ago, and everybody can't imagine not living with it. which is a sign that's sticky, addictive usage because it's so helpful at doing our jobs as individuals and as teams to prep for things along the way. So there's a couple keys to winning, driven from the top. My brother and I founded this organization 20 years ago after leaving government research, and we said, December 1st, oh boy, the world just changed. The way I like to describe it is, imagine the earth is flat. It's not, but imagine it's flat and it's covered with a thin layer of ice and the best lubricant ever and tilted forward towards the future. That is essentially where we're at. And in early January, we said, we have to not just use it incredibly wisely and incredibly creatively and have incredible amount of productivity and really understand. And so being a software company, as well as a consulting company, we have the ability to build things. When we've also been doing research for multiple years, it's funded by DoD and other organizations in this AI machine learning space. So we were able to stand up a lot of things rather quickly and build out our own tools to be able to be an augmented organization. Second thing is you need data. ChatGPT only knows so much. And when your company, and they may be down this road already, ultimately says, oh, we want our own private instance of that, it still needs to be aware of the context of your organization. So whether that's your SCORM courses or your designs or knowledge management systems or other things, ultimately, there needs to be some type of production pipeline and technical pipeline to get that connected into your language model, because that's when they get really useful. Because I don't use ChatGPT anymore, because ChatGPT combined with other things is what powers my experience. And not that I'm not using ChatGPT inside of stuff, I'm just not going to ChatGPT correctly. And I said earlier, find the pain, find the gain. Stephanie, your example was great. I'm sure all of you can think of some example of where you've got discrete pain. And if you can find a way, you find a couple creative folks, have a lunch session, have a little hack session, and put something together and see if it starts to solve the pain. It's the best way to start. So best practices, I guess, or potential pitfalls. If you start with, how to fail, no top-down support. So getting top-down support is absolutely critical. And that means having the right people in the room, not all at once, a couple people together, have some side conversations, build the momentum, recruit your confederates for your organization. And then don't pick the hardest problem. That's the biggest problem. Pick something that's achievable. Don't boil the ocean, for sure. And getting consensus on a team. That's why some of the skills that I shared with you are really critical, because that's going to make the most high performance team to be able to apply here. And just remember, your data isn't necessarily perfect. Doesn't always have to be, but it really depends on what your use cases are. And so you're going to ultimately be building some foundational things that are there. There's going to be additional infrastructure. And, today's not necessarily an IT conversation, but there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen in an organization around privacy and security and governance and policy related to this. So there are a couple different dimensions. And I guess, Claire, in the follow-up, let's include, we have a canvas that I'm going to unpack this for you a little bit, but we have a design thinking canvas that you can use to self-triage some of these things. And so these are sort of the actions. So you got stakeholders. So the first question you got to ask yourself is, who's on my team? Who's on the bus, or who wants to get on the bus? And then you got to understand who's in front of the bus trying to stop the bus from rolling. And you've got to build your stakeholder group. There are use cases, and I'll just unpack this for you this way. They're over on the right side here. So there are use cases. For each of the use cases, there may be one or more proofs of concept that you could use to tackle that. And then the next thing to consider is your data readiness. Do you have the data you need to do the POC? If you don't, what do you need to do to get it? And then, is that the right POC if you don't have the data for it? And is there another use case you should be looking at? And the fourth element there is, what are the capabilities of your team? What are the capabilities you have to augment your team? And then the bigger organizational considerations are, what is the strategy? What are we really trying to accomplish? Do we want to do more with less? Or do we want to do a whole lot more with the same? Or what is that? And then come to the governance element. Do you talk about publicly? We do, about how we use AI to augment our enterprise so we can do things in 2 weeks instead of 6 months. But what is the governance, and what is your policy, and how do you communicate, and how do you ensure that you don't have IP leaks? And there's a lot of stuff there, but that shouldn't slow you down. You want to start with those things and make sure you get a straw man for an idea what the governance are, and then what are the investments and what will happen. But you're doing all this because you started with the exercise you're doing today, which over here on the left is why AI. And what are the hopeful outcomes, and what are the metrics? I wonder if anyone has anything to share from that. If you wouldn't mind. If it's too proprietary, definitely don't share it. Right. So, that's a key place to start. I mean, like these are the major sorts of questions you want to ask yourself in an AI readiness scenario. Why do we want to use it? What do we hope will happen? How will we freaking know? And then perspiration. What are the considerations? Well, IT says no. Okay. Well, organizational leadership says yes, but not yet. And like, what are those considerations? And what are the known unknowns? Like, how are we going to host our own stuff? How are we going to know what data goes in there? Right. These are really useful things to think about with your team. And then, what are your next steps along the way? So just to kind of sum things up here, there's this idea of an augmented enterprise. AI can partner with individuals, AI can partner with teams, AI can partner with groups, it can partner with leaders, and it can partner across companies in some ways. Probably the best way to start, especially from an L&D perspective, is to partner with individuals or partner it with teams. This idea of collective intelligence and knowledge flows and learning loops is just the idea that we can do better to unlock the flow of knowledge in an organization and the opportunities for learning. And if AI can help us do that, and an augmented intelligence team can help us do that, that's fantastic. Aspiring to be an adaptive learning organization is not necessary, but it's very helpful. And communicating that, with your teams and making it clear that we're doing this to put people first and have data-informed strategies and really, really drive excellence across the entire organization's critical. And augmented intelligence teams are something that's extremely powerful, that once you get them working, it will help you to build more of them faster, and also help you to build tools for your own tradecraft if you decide that's the route that you want to go along the way. So really, it's start with a team that really, really believes in the dream. And hopefully you have an opportunity to jot down a few people that you say, hey, we really need to talk about this because it's important, not just now for our organization, but for the organization we need to be in a year or two, because the Earth's moving much faster than it was. These channels that I showed you here, inspiration, perspiration, aspiration, why AI, hopeful outcomes, metrics, considerations, known unknowns, next steps. Working across these channels, really using this as an agenda to frame your conversations. And because this was our agenda that we used and worked quite well for us, and glad to share things that can help you, accelerate your journey. And the last thing is build stuff. You won't know if something can work until it works, and working code trumps all theory. So try stuff, break stuff, make stuff, but you should probably get moving. If you're already playing with stuff, great. If you're not playing with stuff, set aside 10 minutes a day and do things, and you'll find your way. I hope this has been a good journey and discussion for you. I'm glad to answer any questions about anything or that's in this deck, or just sort of general AI stuff as well. And I'm going to pass it back over to you, Stephanie.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. We do have a question from Janet. What can your organization do when considering the impact on individual employees who maybe could be impacted by AI coming in and speeding things up? How can you manage that change and make sure you're not negatively impacting your employees with these great opportunities through AI?
Yeah, great question, Janet. I left my change management slide out of this deck and put it into the parking lot. However, I think I can probably get down to there real quick. Yeah. So change management is absolutely critical. It's AI change management is an hour-long talk in itself. However, there has to be, and this dovetails into the governance side of things. There has to be a push with understanding the landscape with leadership. There has to be a push for understanding the landscape of culture. Because if you're an organization that already puts people first, and we say we're going to put people first, I just saw Griffin from Citadel speaking on CNBC the other day, and he said, we're using AI with our software engineers and we're getting 5 to 10% productivity gains, which I actually find surprising because I see more like 10 to 25%. But he said, we're not going to reduce our workforce. We're going to grow. We're going to keep that workforce. And that was the mark of a really good leader, taking that number and saying, this is what we're getting, but we're not going to reduce our headcount. I think I'm in so many different rooms and conversations. I hear some people saying, oh, we're going to be able to increase our revenue per employee because we're going to get productivity gains or we'll be able to reduce headcount. That's an organization that has a significant amount of change management to do, because there are people that will be impacted by that because they will be out of a job. There will be people that will be impacted by that because they will absorb multiple people's jobs and been paired up with an AI agent. Our position is like, we're just making us better, smarter, faster. We can act as a bigger company without necessarily having to hire. But that's a leadership position. That's a culture, that's a talent position. So there are a lot of things to consider in that landscape. And I think there are a lot of organizations that are going to say, So I could give you probably a much longer answer, but it's a talk in and of itself.
That'll be next month's webinar, maybe.
Yeah, we should do a change management, AI change management one. Great idea. Janet, thank you. You're better than an AI partner.
Maybe she is an AI. We don't know.
Wait,
Oh.
it's coming. Janet would love a CM webinar. Okay.
Yeah. All right, Janet, we will work on that for you. Okay. I think that might be all the questions. We'll give everyone another minute, though, if you want to get more questions in. And we did record this, so we'll be sharing this out. Mike, did you have any last things you want to share before I take over? Where can I find more on Sales Sage? Is that something that only Problem Solutions gets to have, or perhaps ELB or Problem Solutions could help them set that up?
Yes, contact ELB.
Yes. All right. So I will share my last screen. Ian, thank you so much. What a great segue into my closing, which is, so some of you probably know that ELB has incorporated AI into a few of our products, like the AI Wizard in Scenario VR, the Course Builder in Lectura. We've had AI in Rehearsal for a while, but we are now also offering AI services. So as Mike mentioned earlier, we have AI readiness assessments, we have AI boot camps. So we are here to help you kind of incorporate these concepts that Mike just showed you today in this webinar. We can help you set those up in your organization. If you're interested in that, you can contact us at sales@elblearning.com, and we can help you create things like the Sales Sage that Mike showed and other kind of learning experience builders. I think that was one earlier as well. So we are super excited. AI is very committed to being kind of at the forefront of AI and making sure that we are helping everyone use it to help your people do better. That's the goal. So thank you so much, Mike, for coming on here and sharing your time and your expertise today. Thank you to everyone who joined us for this webinar. We love having you here with us, and hopefully we'll see you all on a future webinar, such as our change management one that we will now be planning after this. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.